of Waterloo. I just finished my first year, and it's a really great program. I would 100% recommend. So last summer, I was at an NLP startup where I focused on privacy removal and using NLP and AI and ML to remove a lot of private information from resumes and from documents. And currently, I'm at Uptake, which is an industrial AI company. So we focus on questions like when is a excavator engine going to break? When is a dump truck cylinder going to break? And we basically predict it, and we tell the maintenance staff to fix it before these problems occur. So to save a lot of money and to save a lot of time from unexpected breakdowns. So I mainly code in Python, Node.js, JavaScript, and TypeScript. So my favorite language is Python. I started coding with that in grade 10. And yeah. And by the way, I'll post my LinkedIn at the end of this workshop. Right now, I'm at 50 endorsements for swag. Let's get that up to 100. I want like 100 endorsements on my swag skill on LinkedIn. So agenda for today is we're going to learn what is FastAPI and why we want to use it, and what is a REST API, what is type Python, and we're also going to do 3 examples. So we're going to start off with the simple counter API, then we're going to make an API that stores a list of names, like let's say an example would be storing a list of names for a school, and lastly, we're going to connect our project to an external API. So we're going to get the weather API, and we're going to get the weathers depending on which city and which province their request comes from. So lastly, we're going to do further exploration and also talk about some resources and use cases for that FastAPI. A lot of people that use FastAPI uses. So what is FastAPI? So FastAPI is a modern, fast Python web framework. Well, what is a web framework? A web framework is a set of tools that help build websites and back-end APIs. And this is just a structure and a set of libraries and tools for you to use. So you probably ask, like, what is the advantages of FastAPI versus other popular Python libraries like Flask or Django? So you're probably asking, why is it better? Why should I use FastAPI over Flask? So number one reason is it's really fast. It's fast AF. Like the speed of FastAPI is on par with asynchronous Node.js, and it's also on par with another programming language. It's called Golang, and a lot of people think of that language as super fast, and FastAPI is on par with that. So compared to Flask, we are 2 times as fast as that library. So the second reason why is fewer bugs. So studies from Airbnb and from Uber has found that 30 to 40% of bugs are caused due to the lack of typing in Python. We see a lot of companies like Facebook and Google which are requiring all Python code to be typed, and this allows less bugs and it allows a better developer experience. And last of all, it's really easy. It's designed to be easy to use and to learn, and it's less time reading documentation and more time building your API and building your project. So companies like Microsoft, Uber, and Netflix, they have teams there that use FastAPI already. So this isn't just some random side project that someone started. This is legit. This is being used at Fang. It's being used at Microsoft. It's being used at Uber and Netflix. And there's a couple of teams at Google that use FastAPI too. There's 31,000 stars on GitHub, and it's a really active project. So first of all, we need a bit of prerequisite knowledge. So we basically ask ourselves, what is a path and what's a query? So when we visit a website like google.com, we see that we have an index. This is called a root. So basically, there's nothing after the .ca or .com, and this is what is called the index. So traditionally, you would put a backslash in the end of Google. Oops. You would put a backslash at the end of Google, and that's how you know it's at the home page. But through modern times, it is inferred that we know that there's a backslash there. Okay, so let's say we want to go to a different route, right? We want to go to a different path. Let's say we want to go to our image, Google image. How do we do that? Google designated this path as their Google image search. So if I click on this and if I add the path, so image HP, it'll bring us to Google image. All right. And the last thing that I want to talk about in terms of path is dynamic path. So let's say for Instagram, right? We have this user account, Kurius. Sorry, I can't pronounce it correctly. So we basically have an account that's basically being inferred from our path. Let's say we want to go to Elon Musk's or like a fan's account's Instagram, then we just put Elon Musk in this parameter. We put the Instagram username, we click on it, and this is our path. And let's say we want to go to Facebook's Instagram. So we just type Facebook. And that's how we get onto Facebook, at Facebook's Instagram page. All right, so now we have a clear understanding of what a path is. We are going to talk about queries. So what is a query? So a query is basically saying you want this search. So you're basically giving your URL a set of variables. So let's say I want to search something on Google. I want to search something like hello world. So what I do is I put a question mark to dictate that it's separating from the initial part of the URL and from the variables. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the variable Q to hello world. So basically what this URL does is it searches hello world on Google. So if I click on it, you will see that I search hello world. Let's say I want to change the query. So what I do is I do Q equals, and let's say I want to search something like brick roll, right? And that's how I search it. So just a quick recap of how to use queries. All you have to do is click a question mark, and then you set a bunch of variables in the end of the URL. This is another example of what a query is. So over here on YouTube, we set V is equal to the video ID. So when I click on this, we get onto the Rickroll YouTube page. Okay, awesome. And let's say we want two variables. So first variable is we want our video ID. We keep that the same, right? And second variable is the time. When do we want to start it? Do we want to start our video at t equals 0, or do we want to start it at the 15-second mark? So over here, when I do and, it basically is just a separator between variables. And we do and we write t equals 15. So that means we're going to start at the 15-second mark. As you can see, we started at the 15-second mark in our YouTube video, and that's another thing about queries. Does anyone have any questions about path or queries?
I have a question.
Yeah, what's up, Jimmy?
What happens if you put random variables that can't?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. Let's test it out. So if I want to put a random variable here, we do and we do, let's say, a variable hello world, and we equal that to Jimmy. It doesn't matter. In some frameworks, it just deletes the random variables from your path. In other frameworks, it basically errors out, and it basically tells you to remove those variables from the queries and from the path. Does that answer your question, Jimmy?
Oh, that's really cool.
Okay.
So
Thank
by
you for.
deleting it, is that how they prevent code injection?
Yeah. So basically, by deleting it, it's just it looks cleaner, and it is a security concern also, right?
Mhm.
All right. Next. All right. So I want you to do the diamond hands emoji in the workshop if you know what a REST API is. Diamond hands emoji. Yo, Eden, you should be doing the diamond hands emoji. You know what a REST API is.
Yo, no cap.
Okay, so not a lot of us know what a REST API is, so I'll basically explain the high-level overview of what this is. So first of all, when we want to connect a client, like a browser like Chrome or Firefox, and we want to get information from a server, we use something called HTTP methods, and this is over the REST API. So there are four main types of REST APIs. The first one is GET, and this is the one where we're going to primarily use in our workshop. Basically, what we're saying is we want to get something from the database, right? Next is post, and post is basically saying I want to update something in the database, I want to update something in the server, and this is a very secure way of sending data to the server. The third method is put. This is where we put new items into our database. Let's say we have a new student, right? And we want to put the student's ID and name and age into our database, and this is how we would use put. And the last one is delete. Delete is basically saying we want to delete something in the database. Let's say our database has Eden, Jimmy, Leo, and Kenson right now, and we want to delete Eden from our database. Then we would use the delete method, and we basically say, I want to delete Eden on our database. And now we're only left over with all of our people in our database except for Eden. All right, awesome. If this doesn't make sense right now, don't worry. When we get to the coding part, everything would make sense. Everything will make sense. It's a very awesome framework. Okay. So next up is we have to learn about what type Python is. So normally when we put Python, right, we don't have to specify the type. We can basically say name is equal to a string, oren, right? And my age is equal to an integer. In type Python, what we do is we specify, hey, this variable needs to be a string. So basically what I do is I put colon string, and I basically say it's equal to oren, right? And another thing for age is we do colon integer is equal to 18. So this is just a safe way for developers to specify the type. If you come from a language like Java, C++, C, Golang, TypeScript, we use types, and this basically brings our types into Python. So after Python 3.5, this is 100% supported. Type Python is 100% supported, and it's encouraged. Companies like Google and Facebook are now requiring Type Python in their code base, and this allows them to reduce their bugs by 30%, and this allows them to really secure their code against malicious developers and against other developers that don't know how to use their code. So let's say, for example, right? Let's say we want to add two integers together, right? So in an untyped Python way, we would just say we want this variable A and we want variable B, right? And we just return adding them together, right? this is unsafe. What if a user passes an array to our function? Or what if a user passes a string to our function, right? It's going to cause undefined behaviors, and we don't want that. We want our code to be safe. We want it to be like a vault, right? It's a technique called defensive programming. Basically, what we want is we want developers that are using our function, they can't screw up. If they screw up, it'll have an error, or it'll tell them, it'll have a red squiggly line in their IDE, and basically saying like, hey, don't put a array into our function. So with type Python, we basically have an integer. We do colon integer, basically saying the variable a is an integer, and we do colon int, and this basically says variable b must be an integer. And we do this arrow symbol, and basically what we say over here is we return an integer too. So this is something similar to like in TypeScript, except TypeScript is like a transpiled, right? In Python, this is natively supported. And the last example that I'm going to show is I'm going to show adding elements into an array. So as you can see in this array, we just call it an array variable. A user could pass it, let's say, integer. An integer doesn't have the method append, so it'll basically crash a program. We don't want that to happen. So at the top of our file, we can see that the array is a list of integers, and the element that we want to add to it is an integer too. So basically what we do is we import something called a list from the typing module in Python, and we basically say that the array has to be a list of integers. And we basically say the element has to be an integer too. And what it returns is a list of integers. So basically this makes our code type safe, and it basically prevents developers on other teams or your friend from screwing up your code then blaming you. When we do this in an IED, and let's say you pass in a list of strings here, it'll basically say a red squiggly line right here, and it'll basically say you screwed up. You're only allowed lists of integers here. All right, so now that we've gone through REST APIs, we've gone through what type Python is, and we've gone through why we should use FastAPI, let's get right onto coding. So what we have is we're going to use something called Riplet. It's a free online IED. Zero setup. I'm going to send you guys a link right now. And yeah. Okay, 1 second. So once you get the link, please make sure to fork the Riplet and to, yeah, just make sure to fork the Riplet. 1 second, let me see if I sent the right thing. All right, awesome. Let me unshare my screen. All right. So when you land on this page, what you're going to do is you're going to click the fork button right here, top right-hand corner. You're going to click on the fork button, and you're going to basically log into your Riplet or sign in. We're going to wait a couple minutes for everyone to sign into the Riplet, and that's it. So once you signed in, you should get a page that looks like this. All right, so once you're at this stage, type F in chat. Just type F in chat. All right, awesome. We got one person. We got two. We got three people. Three people. Okay. Okay, awesome. We'll wait 1 or 2 more minutes for everyone to be on this page. Does anyone need help? Please unmute yourself and we can share screen and we can help out in any way. This is a judgment-free zone, so don't feel like there's any stupid questions in this. Okay, we got 5 Fs in chat. Does anyone else want to do F? Is anyone else? If you need help, make sure to just unmute yourself and I'll make sure we can get the appropriate help. Okay, going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay, wait. I guess we're waiting a bit. All right. All right, so I'm gonna start moving on. If you need any help, DM Eden Chen or DM me and we can help you out in setting up the replit. Okay. So let me just explain the boiler code, what we have right now. So if can everyone just click the run button at the top? Okay. You will see on the console that we're installing packages, and this is okay. This is going to take a minute, and we're just going to wait for it to install the FastAPI packages and the packages that FastAPI depends on. So at the top of this, there will be a run button. It's going to take about a minute to install. And while we're installing, let's talk about what's this boilerplate code. All right, so first off, we import FastAPI in line number 1. And next, what we do is we import something called Unicorn. So what Unicorn is, it's basically just a layer server that sits in front of our FastAPI framework. And this helps us serve and run our FastAPI. So you don't need to worry too much about it. Just picture this as like a layer that sits in front of FastAPI to do a lot of the connection requests and a lot of that stuff. All right, so next what we do is we create an object from the FastAPI class, and we name this object app. All right. So this basically, what it does, it creates an instance of our FastAPI, and all of our instance data and everything is going to be stored in this variable. All right, so now we're on to line 6. So we use this special character in Python. It's called a decorator. And basically what we're saying is we're doing app.get. And basically what we're saying is we're going to get the index. If we refer from what the index is, it's basically the home page. Let's say when you go to google.ca, when you go to google.ca or .com, this is basically the index, the home page. So right now, in the home page, we're passing this to our function. We're calling this index. And what we're doing is we're returning a string, hello world. So once you see this corner panel right here, you can click on this button right here. It's open a new tab. Once you click on it, we can see that we return hello world. So let's say we don't want to return the hello world string. Let's say we want to return hello Oren. That's what we want to return, or hello your name, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to click the stop button. We're going to change hello world to hello Orin. Then we're going to click the run button again. And after we click the run button, we're going to click open new tab again, and we now see it's hello Orin. All right, awesome. So now let's expand upon our application. So now we have a home page, right? Now we could return hello world or hello Orin or hello your name. And now what we want to do is we want to make a counter. So what we're going to do is we're going to do @app.get, and we're going to return, this is going to be on the route // Okay. So basically what this counter is going to return, it's going to be a function, define counter function, and what this is going to return, it's going to return an integer. Okay, awesome. So basically we say that we tell Python that we're going to return an integer. Let's say right now, for now, we're going to return 5. We're going to click the stop button. We're going to click the run button again. And we're going to click it open. And what we're going to do is we're going to do the route /counter. And now we see that we returned the number 5. But we return the number 5 every single time. How are we going to increment it? What we do is we have a global variable. We have a global variable. What we're going to call this is we're going to call this current counter. So this is going to be my counter stuff. We're going to call this current counter. This is going to be a type of int. And let's just say we're going to start us off at 0. All right, awesome. So now what we're going to do is we're going to return the current counter. All right, so now we have an endpoint that gets the number. So if we click stop and we click run again, then when we reload the page, we get 0, right? That's awesome. But we still want a way to increment it. We still want a way to make sure that we're able to increase it. We don't want this /counter to just return a 0. So what we do is we do @app.get. So basically what we're doing is we're going to get the route from it. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to do /counter / and we're going to use the curly braces. And this is going to be the amount that we're going to increment by. So basically what this is basically a parameter for our function. Amount is going to be an integer. And we're just going to return the current integer after we increment it. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to use the global counter variable in our function. So basically we have to use the global keyword because we have to infer that we're using this variable, not a local variable in our function. Don't ask me why. This is just a very Python way of doing stuff. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to do counter. We're going to increment that by the amount. All right, awesome. Now the last step is we said we're going to return an integer. Return, what is the integer? We're going to return the current counter. All right, awesome. So we're going to click stop and we're going to click run again. So if I refresh it, it's still going to be 0, but I want to increment it by 5. So what I do is I do /counter /5. So now when we go back to the /counter, we see that's 5. What if I want to increment it again by 1? I do /1. I click on it and now it becomes 6 because 5 plus 1 is 6, right? Awesome. So now we learned how to use a path parameter. Does anyone recall what are the two types of things that we talked about at the beginning? First one is a path. The second one is a query, right? Let's say we want to increment this via a query instead of via the path where we just put the number at the path. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to click the decorator app.get/counter/add. But you're probably asking yourself, how do we pass in the number that we want to increment by? So what we do is we define our variable counter add by a query, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to pass in the increment amount, and this is going to be int. And basically we want to do the same thing as we want to return an integer too. So we're just basically going to copy the code, and we're going to use the increment amount. Okay. Okay, awesome. So now we have a different way of incrementing our counter. Instead of incrementing it via a path, we're going to increment it via a parameter. So what we're going to do is we're going to click stop, and we're going to click run. Now I go and I click new tab, and I click /amount/add, and I do the question mark, right? The question mark is to separate from the main parameter from our variable. So what is our variable? As you see from the parameter of our function, the variable is going to be increment amount. So what we're going to do is we're going to do question mark increment amount, and we're going to do equals 5. Oh, what? Oh, okay, 1 second. We have to do a backslash right here. So for this, we have to use a backslash. Okay, I'm just going to restart. I'm going to click stop, and I'm going to click run. And now when I click it again, oh, what? Oh, okay. So instead of putting amount, I should have put counter. My bad. So as we can see, we incremented by 5. Let's increment it by 420. So it should be 425 now, right? Awesome. So if we go back to the counter, we see that it's 425 now. All right, awesome. So now we have a way to get our counter amount. We have a way to increment our counter amount via a path, and we have a way to increment our counter amount via a query. Does anyone have any questions about what we did so far? If you don't have any questions, just so I know we are on the same page, let's do rocket ship emojis in the workshop channel. Everyone do rocket ship emojis in the workshop channel.
Hey, there will be a recording on this workshop, right?
Yep.
In the YouTube channel?
Yep.
All right, okay, thanks.
Okay, awesome. We got a lot of rocket ships. Okay, so basically what we're going to do now is we are going to do the school list. So basically this is what this is going to be is it's going to be that's basically the same thing, but instead of incrementing numbers, incrementing a counter, we're basically going to have an array, and we're going to add strings into array, and we're also going to delete strings to array. All right, awesome. Hashtag array name. So this is just a comment to separate out our code. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to define a global variable. This is going to be student list. And basically what this is going to be is it's going to be a list of strings. And remember, when we use the list object in Python, we have to import it from typing. Okay, awesome. So now what we want to do is we want to make a function that basically returns the array, right? So I'm just going to copy this from my other screen. And basically what we're saying at this route slash school slash list is we're going to return a list of array. We're going to return the global list school list. All right, so I'm going to click stop and I'm going to click run again. And we're going to open a new window and we're going to go to slash school slash list. And we're basically just going to have an empty list, right? We didn't add anything to our list. That's why it's empty. Okay, so let's say we want to add something to our list now. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to do app.get, and we're going to put in the route. And then we're going to put in our path parameter. That's why we're using this squiggly line. All right, so next we're going to define our function. We're going to define this add student. And basically what we're going to have is we're going to have the same parameter from our route. And this is going to be a string. And we're going to pass it into our function. And what we're going to return is we're going to return the updated list of our student list. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing. We're going to use the global list. So we know we're going to be talking about this variable. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to append our student name onto the student list. And what we're going to do is we're going to return the student list. All right. So I'm going to click stop again. And then now I'm going to click run. And now I'm going to open the new tab. And we're going to go to the route slash school slash list. And now we see it's still an empty list. Why don't we add a name? So we're going to do add student. And we're going to, let's add a name. Let's say we're going to add Leo, right? Awesome. Now Leo is in our student list. Let's say we're going to add another person. Let's say we're going to add Eden. Eden is now in our list. Let's say we're going to add my name, Oren. Now Oren is in the list. So if we go back to the route slash school slash list, we see that there's 3 people in our list. Okay, so now let's add another functionality to our list variable. Let's say now what we want to do is we want to delete all the students from our list. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do app.get, and we're going to put the route slash school slash delete all students. This isn't just going to delete one student, it's going to delete all students. So I'm going to do the function delete student. The parameter for this function is going to be nothing. And this is just going to return a string, a list of string. And this, obviously, we know it's going to be an empty list of strings. So we do the same thing. What we do is we do global student list. So we know we're inferring from the student list global variable. And now what we're going to do is we're going to just set it to a pair of empty arrays. And we're just going to return this. Okay, awesome. So now I'm going to click stop and I'm going to click run again. And we're going to click open the new tab. And when I go to slash school slash add, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add my name. Okay, wait 1 second. Add student. Add student. I'm going to add my name. I'm going to add Addison, let's say, and then we're going to add another name. We're going to add Lewis. Let's say we're going to add Lewis. So now we have 3 people in our list. And what we want to do is we want to delete all of our students from this list. So once we call this route, delete all students, now we return an empty array. And when we go to slash school slash list, we see now it's an empty array. Okay, awesome. We're going to move on to the last part of our project, which is going to be connecting it to a weather API. Does anyone have any questions so far? If you are following along, do a smile emoji in the chat. Do a smile emoji in the workshop chat if you're following along so far. Okay, awesome. So awesome. Steven, is there anything that you need help on? I see that you didn't do a smile emoji yet. I would love to help you and see where there's any confusion. Feel free to unmute yourself if you want. Okay, so let's move on to the last part. Let's move on to the weather. This is going to be our weather API. So far what we have is we have a counter API. So counter API, we have a school API, and our school API has a list of stuff for getting all of the student lists. We are able to add students to the school. We are able to delete all the students. Let's say everyone graduated, so we want to remove all the students. This is a scenario where we would use this API. Now on to the last part of our API. So what we want to do is we want to connect to an external API. So this might get a little bit confusing because we're building an API ourselves with FastAPI. But what we're also going to do is we're also going to call external APIs. So what we're going to do is we're going to call external API called weather.taught.python. So I'm going to post this in our chat. Friday workshops. This is what this is basically an API for getting the weather data. So as we can see, the current endpoint is we have to do /API/weather, and we pass it a query of city. Okay, so to make this a bit more clear, what we have to do is we have to call this API from our FastAPI. What we're going to do is we're going to call /API/weather, and we have to do the question mark since it's a query. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to do city equals Toronto, because that's where I'm from. Okay, I'm going to paste this in chat. If we call this API right now, we see what a lot of you guys will see is you'll just see like some random gibberish and some random brackets. So we are going to download a Chrome extension. It's called JSON Formatter, and you just put Chrome. When you download it, this gives you an option to format your JSON so it doesn't look like a spam of text. And basically what it is parsed. So as we see in this JSON, we have a couple of the attributes. We have a weather attribute, we have a wind attribute, and we have a forecast attribute. And in this forecast attribute / object, we see there's like temperature, there's feels like, there's the pressure, and there's the humidity, right? And in the wind, we see the speed and we see the degrees. But this is too much data for us. I don't care about the pressure of what it's going to be. I don't care about the humidity. All I care about is I'm going outside. I want to know what to wear, and I want to care about the temperature, and I want to care about the wind speed. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to create an endpoint. So let's call our first endpoint, let's call this speed. Let's call this weather / wind speed. And we're going to define a variable. Let's call this get wind speed. And what this does is we're going to get the parameter, and this is going to be a city parameter. And we're going to return an integer. Since speed is in the form of, we're going to return a float. Since wind speed is in terms of a float, think about like 10.1 kilometers per hour heading west, right? Okay, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to use something called the request library. So we're going to import requests, and this is just a Python package that lets us call our API endpoints. So instead of manually typing it in our browser in the route section, we're basically just going to call it through our Python code. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to do data is going to be equal to request .get. So we're basically going to be getting our data from this endpoint, and we're basically going to be getting, one second. So from this endpoint, basically what we're going to do is we're going to get our weather data. Okay, so basically since we have city as a parameter, we're basically just going to attach it to the city string. So as we can see over here, we can do Toronto, we can do something like Montreal. Oh wow, it's much more chilly or better weather in Montreal. Like in Toronto, like I'm dying. It's like 30 degrees already. But in Montreal, it's 20 degrees. Let's say another city. Does anyone live in another city other than Montreal in Toronto? Put it in the workshop chat if you do. Okay, we have one person from Ottawa. So let's find the weather from Ottawa. Okay, so right now the weather in Ottawa is 26 degrees. It's not that bad. It's not as bad as Toronto right now. But yeah, let's say we want another city. Let's say we want Oakville. We see that we get all of this weather data for Oakville, right? So basically what we're doing right here is we're getting this request, and instead of typing it in our browser, we're getting this through Python. So next, what we have to do is we have to parse it. So Python provides us with a nice method. All we have to do is we have to do .json, and that's it. Okay. Okay, one second. Okay, lastly, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do return, and we're gonna return our data, right? And as we said, we only want to return the wind speed, right? So what we do is we do wind, and then we return speed. So in this nested object, right? So first, to narrow down what we want to return, we first we get the wind object in this. So basically what we're getting in is this. And next what we get is the speed. So we just pass the speed in also. I click stop and I click run again. Okay, wait one second. My bad. Instead of writing string in Python, we just do str. So when I click run again, and when I click new tab, oops, one second. So when I click open a new tab, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do /weather /wind speed. And what we're going to do is I'm going to pass it the query of city equals Toronto. And now we see the wind speed in Toronto is 1.08 kilometers per hour. Okay, awesome. Now let's say we want to call on our API endpoint, and we want to do the city Montreal instead. And we see it's a bit more windy in Montreal. It's 4.36 kilometers per hour in wind speed. Okay, awesome. So now that we're done the first API endpoint for our weather, let's do our second API endpoint. So at first, what we said is we want to do our wind speed and we want to do the temperature. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to copy these lines and I'm going to paste it. And this is just going to be temperature. Temp. Let's just do temp. And what we're going to do, instead of getting wind speed, we're going to get the temperature. We're going to keep the same query. So we're going to query the city. So the city is going to be a string again, and we're going to return the float. Basically, since weather is like 32.5 degrees Celsius or 32.02 degrees Celsius, this is basically why we return a float. Okay, awesome. So we still call the same API endpoint and we still make it into JSON. What we change instead is we change the wind speed. So instead of querying our wind speed, what we want to query is we want to query forecast. So we want to get our forecast object now. So basically what we have now is we have just the forecast object. Next, inside the forecast object, we want to query the temperature. So as we can see, it's just temp. So we replace our second key or second key with temp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click stop and I'm going to click run again. Now I'm going to click open a new window and I'm going to click /forecast. Or sorry, I'm going to click our API endpoint. So this is going to be /weather/temperature. Okay, awesome. So right now we result in an error. We see that the query city is missing, right? As I forgot to put our city query. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do question mark and I'm going to do city. So our city variable, let's do Toronto. So as you see right now in Toronto, temperature is 25.81 degrees Celsius. And now that we defined our two things. So first of all, we defined our weather. And second of all, we defined our temperature. Okay, that's awesome. So now we built 3 API endpoints with FastAPI. So to reiterate, what we have built is we have built a counter API. So this, we're able to increment our counter and we're able to get the current amount in our counter. Next, we have built our school API. So this is going to return a list of students that attend a current school. We're able to add more students to our API, to our array, and we are able to delete all of our students. And the third and final thing that we built is we built a weather API. So when we do /weather/wind speed, we are able to get the wind speed based off of our query. So in our query, we are able to pass it our city, right? And the last thing that we did for our weather API is we get the weather and we get the temperature based off the city. Okay, awesome. So we, as I said before, we built 3 APIs, and this is awesome. So we went from knowing nothing about FastAPI an hour ago to understanding why people at Microsoft, people at Netflix, people at Uber, why they use FastAPI, because it's number 1, fast. Number 2, it supports type Python natively. And number 3, it's just really intuitive and really easy to use compared to other libraries like Django or like Flask. Okay, so going back to my slides. One second. So going back to my slides. Does everyone see my slides so far?
Yep.
Yep, okay. So we asked ourselves, where is FastAPI used? So you told me that it's used at Uber. You told me that it's used at Netflix. And you told me that it's used at Microsoft. But what is it used for? So one of the main things that FastAPI is used for is to serve a model, ML model API to production. So you have your data scientists, they create models, you create ML models, AI models, you create NLP models or computer vision models. But now you have a model, you have to basically put a wrapper around it. And this is one of the things that FastAPI is used for. Another thing that it's being used for is it's being used for server-side rendered applications. Another thing that it's being used for, it's being used for user authentication. So with FastAPI, if you read through the documentation, you're able to provide user authentication and user authentication. And this is one of the main things that FastAPI is being used for. You're able to connect it to databases like MySQL, MongoDB, and Postgres, and we are able to serve our API endpoints. So what are the next steps? So right now we have the code that we built together, but there's a lot of functionalities that you can continue building off of. So one of the things that I was thinking is maybe you input a decrement. So right now we increase by a certain amount, right? But what if we want to decrease by a certain amount? That's something that maybe you can increment. Another thing that you guys can increment is you guys can add multiple students at once. As you see in our example, we had to add one student, one over another. Let's say we want to add all of these students at bulk. So this is something that we want to build. And the last thing that we want, let's just build it together. Let's build a surprise Rickroll. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my Riplet. And for this endpoint, what we're going to do is we're going to do at app.get, and this is just going to be surprise. So we're just basically going to call this route surprise. And we're going to define a function surprise. Okay, awesome. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to do a redirect. How do we do redirects? We import this library from, this is basically the same thing as FastAPI. This is one of the libraries that FastAPI uses. And we import a redirect response. So what we're going to do is we're going to return a redirect response. And we're going to return this URL. So whenever I go to /surprise, I'm going to go to this URL. You guys are probably asking, like, what does this URL redirect to? So as I said before, it redirects to Rickroll. So I'm going to click stop and I'm going to click run again. Okay, I'm going to click open, new tab, and I'm going to click /surprise. Never gonna let you up, never gonna get you down. Okay, that's a bit cringy. But as you can see, when we go to /surprise, it brings us to our Rickroll YouTube video. Okay, so basically that's the last thing that we're gonna do. And that's the end of my presentation. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Discord. Here is my Discord tag. And if you guys have any suggestions on how I can improve the workshop, I really appreciate feedback, and that would be great. That is it for the end of the workshop. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask it right now. You guys can unmute your mic and you guys can ask questions.
Hey, I have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
So, type Python actually affects runtime, right? Unlike TypeScript.
So in type Python, right? Basically what it is you know how in TypeScript it transpiles to JavaScript, right? So it brings your TypeScript code back to JavaScript, right? So in type Python, we don't have to transpile. Basically, the just-in-time compiler basically already knows you don't have to transpile it. Is there any performance hit? Yes, probably. Is it noticeable? Absolutely not. What is the performance hit from? From basically your file size being bigger, right? It basically, you have like 3 more letters in your file size, and that's going to cause a very unnoticeable performance hit. And another performance hit is when the just-in-time compiler in Python, when it goes through your code, it has to parse a couple more tokens. So basically, those are the 2 main things that are going to cause a very unnoticeable performance hit. It's so unnoticeable that you don't even need to worry about it. Let me know if that answers your question.
What I was thinking of was, you know how like when TypeScript compiles to JavaScript,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people complain that although there is static type checking in TypeScript, it doesn't really transfer over to the JavaScript because if you say like const number is a type number, but when it transpiles to JavaScript, it just turns into const number with no type again. So it doesn't really affect runtime, but is this different for type Python? So I'm guessing it actually affects how it works, right?
So basically what we do type is at development time, right? At runtime, your code should already be in the proper type, since you should be able to see like red squiggly lines during development time, right? So at development time, if you're not doing the correct types, like in TypeScript, you'll see red squiggly lines and it will not transpile, right? So same principle applies to Python. If you see red squiggly lines anywhere in your IDE, you should make sure to fix them before running it.
Okay, I see.
Does anyone else have any more questions?
Yeah, so at the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned how FastAPI is supposed to be faster than Flask and Django. Like, other than like the performance, like what's the difference? Like, why choose FastAPI over like Flask or Django?
Mm-hmm. So this answer might get into a bit nitty gritty, but the main reasons why FastAPI is being widely adopted, it has a lot. Number one, performance. Number two, it's first class support for types. Number three, it's easy. And the fourth reason is it's first class support for asynchronous coding. So Flask has been around for ages, right? Flask has been around, Django has been around for ages, and this was before asynchronous Python code. And the trend right now is towards asynchronous Python code. So Django recently added asynchronous Django last year, but it's very hacky and very sketchy. In FastAPI, asynchronous code is supported. First class is supported natively, and during the design and creation of FastAPI, it had asynchronous code in mind. Okay, awesome. If there is any more questions, feel free to DM it to me, and I'll make sure to answer it in time. And one more last thing, 1 second, let me post the link. So I posted a link to my LinkedIn, right? So if you guys can scroll down and you go see my skills section, right? You see swag, click endorse on it. Okay, like I want to get 100 endorse on swag. Endorse my Python skills too, but like I don't care about that. Just endorse my swag. Like endorse my swag. But yeah, thank you so much for attending my workshop. I hope you guys learned a lot. And yeah, thank you so much.